Hi, ladies. Welcome back to today's session, the Love Breakthrough Virtual Retreat. And I'm thrilled to be joined by the beautiful Ella. Today, we're going to be talking all sorts of things about holistic self growth and specifically human design. She's a 4-6, is that how you say it, Ella? A 4-6 sacral generator?
Yes.
Which means that her role here is to be a role model, a teacher, and share a lot of wisdom, especially based from her own life experiences, because she's traveled extensively, used to have a corporate career. Now she's working in Bali, doing yoga, lots of spirituality and holistic living, has beautiful courses, beautiful breathwork sessions, and living authentically is pretty much your life's mission, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Now, you teach a lot of things and coach women in a lot of different areas. As I just mentioned, some of them also authentic relating and communication and human design. Tell us a little bit about all of these broad interests and how or why it is that you incorporate all of those in the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And I think to share what I do, I really have to start with a life mantra that sort of when I embodied, it really changed my life. And when I realized that living by example was my job, I got to like relax into this deep knowing. It's like, oh, I just get to be me and you get to be you. And we get to accept that we are fundamentally different, and that's beautiful. Like, wow, sign me up for this life. So and then also, you know, the byproduct of that is that I get to make a living from being me. And I truly believe that, you know, everyone can, and you can do the same. So embracing this simple fact really changed everything and transformed everything in my life. And alongside that, like, we get to see that everything is interconnected, not only, you know, like collectively in a world scale, but even within ourselves. So when people come to work with me, it's not like one quick fix or, you know, one specific practice. We have to look at the whole being. We have to, you know, you can't start with manifestation if you haven't looked at the nervous system. So yeah, it's really fascinating when we understand that we can only receive the level of safety that we have built in our nervous system to do so. So yeah, like, people come to me for various reasons, and you know, a lot of them come like, you know, looking to attract lasting love, or um you know, they want to improve their relationship. And we can't start with, you know, affirmations of like, you know, because maybe nothing will happen. We have to start at the beginning. Like, our nervous system has to feel that safety. We have to start on the physical body, and then we can move into deeper layers of the mind and understanding the limiting beliefs that might be holding us back. And then the body, you know, breath work, somatic practices, and the psychology as well. I'm fascinated by human connection and how we are, you know, fundamentally different, but not really taught how to harmoniously interact with each other. So there's so many different parts to it. And human design comes in when we start to peel back those layers, the conditioning, the trauma, the imprints that were put on us from a young age. And when we start to uncover those, we get to find out who we were born to be. And human design really shows us that in a practical way. It tells us how our energy is designed to function, how we're meant to interact, make decisions, all of these like fun characters that we get to bring into our life. So yeah, I'm definitely not the kind of person that just sticks to one thing. I'm just constantly evolving and learning. And then as a byproduct of that, it's just sharing what I've learned along the way, so that you don't have to hopefully go through all the same, you know, uncomfortableness that I went through. I mean, maybe that's your life path anyway, which for many of us, we learn through our challenges and obstacles. But yeah, it's a beautiful and wild ride.
It certainly is. And We're going to talk a lot about human design. There will be some ladies that know quite a bit about it, and some this might be their first introduction. So we will sort of unpack that a little bit, which is exciting. But I wanted to circle back a little bit and not just skip over your feeling about us being able to receive at the level that our nervous system can. And I know that you're an experienced breathwork practitioner. The session that you did with the ladies at my Bali retreat this year was absolutely phenomenal. Like, they broke through barriers, had amazing experiences. There was incredible feedback. For anyone that's going to join us in 2024, this is absolutely something not to miss out on. So tell us a little bit about that side of things before we move on to the human design.
So yeah, it's like maybe we try to convince our mind on a conscious level that we are worthy for love, or that we are ready to receive that loving partnership. But in our past, we were rejected or hurt or abandoned or whatever. And that was stored in the body. So our mind is saying one thing, but our nervous system, which is so beautiful and is always trying to keep us safe, is essentially like, whoa, 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 no, shut down, protection mode, back away. And it's doing everything to protect us from feeling that pain again. So when we come into breath work and we create this safe container, we're essentially using a conscious connected breath where we rhythmically loop the breath. And in this process, we are hyperoxygenating our system, and we're able to leave the monkey mind, the conscious analytical thinking mind, and tap into deeper states of our subconscious awareness. And within this, we're able to revisit those times in our life where we experienced trauma, or we had a situation that was so overwhelming that we didn't have the tools or the capacity to process it at the time. And during the breathwork session, we are able to revisit that, but from this safe space with a loving and compassionate eye. And we can become sort of like our own surgeons, you could say. And in that space, we're able to process it. We're able to move it up through and out of the body. So we have this release on a somatic level, and that's really where the healing starts to happen. And then our body is like, oh, that's no longer stored in there. I can, create this new level of safety. It proves to myself that story wasn't true. Just because that happened in the past doesn't mean that it's going to repeat in the present or in the future. So it's one of the fastest and most powerful healing modalities that I have experienced on myself. And I constantly get told, session after session, like, wow, that was the most transformational experience of my life, or that felt like 10 years of therapy in one session. And I'm just like, yes, keep spreading the word, because it truly is this powerful.
I love that, because we're literally living in an age where we're consuming so much information. The knowledge we have about our own patterns, our past childhood experiences, the knowledge we have about all of this, and for the ladies that are watching, all of the things that they're learning about relationships and dating and love and all of that, it's great, but it's all here, and it's not necessarily turning up or transforming into real actual change. So I love that you've pointed that out.
Yes, there's like this quote that I love, and it's kind of like the difference between knowledge and wisdom is embodiment. So like we have to actually, it has to become a felt experience within the body. Otherwise, it's just all up here in the mind. And that's only one aspect. We have to look at ourselves as holistic beings. We're mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and they all interconnect.
Season 4 of the Love Breakthrough Virtual Retreat, you shared with the ladies a beautiful heart opening breathwork session. Would you be happy for me to share it with the ladies that didn't get a chance to see that last year or to experience that last year? Could we, pretty please?
Share the magic with the ladies, please.
It was so beautiful. I would I would really like for the ladies that is, if this is their first year joining us, to be able to get an experience of that. Let's start to move towards this magical thing called human design. For those who aren't aware of what that is, tell us a little bit about.
Yes, so human design is I guess you could call it a knowledge-based system that is a combination of astrology, quantum physics, the Kabbalah, the Hindu chakra system, the I Ching, Chinese Book of Changes. And essentially it takes from our time and date and place of birth, and it creates this unique blueprint. So where all of the planets were aligned and arranged at our time of birth, and also 88 days before our time of birth, create this map of who we are. And it shows us the version of us before the conditioning that we receive from our family, from society, the schooling system, past relationships. And it's like, for me, it's like this, I just get to be me. Like, these are my strengths. These are, the challenges that I might have to overcome in my life. And this is how my energy is designed to function. So on one hand, there are so many different practical ways to look at human design and actually start to implement it into your life. So again, it's all about that practical. How can I bring the experience into my body? So you mentioned at the start that I'm a 4-6 sacral generator. So 70% of the world are actually generator or manifesting generator types. And this means they do have that sacral energy, which is kind of like this life force energy. It's like this humming motor and this drive into the world. And like the theme of the generator is satisfaction. So 70% of the world is designed to feel satisfied. Yet how many people are living like a 9-to-5 job in a congested city, and they're just feeling frustrated? It's like, oh my gosh, if more people were living in alignment with their unique and authentic self, like, the world would be a much better place. And human design gives us these tools to understand who we are and how we make decisions, how we connect with other people. So, within my relationship work, I love to look at different charts and how they fit together. So for example, like, I'm a generator, as I said, which is that sort of like energy, that feeling of satisfaction. And my partner is a projector, and projectors are the guides of the world. So I'm like here ready to be seen and to respond to life. And my partner is here to kind of see and penetrate the soul of me and guide the world. They really see what the world needs. So we're fundamentally different, right? But if we can understand that strategy of how to interact, then we just get to accept ourselves and accept others for who we are. And it makes, interacting with each other a lot more harmonious in my perspective.
I love that you've just described really almost two separate but really important ways in which we can use human design. One is to understand ourselves, but then also to understand the interplay between the dynamics of two different types. What is it about human design that you are specifically drawn to that might be different from, say, astrology or other, personality type systems or things like that?
Yeah, I personally love human design because of that practicality. And so maybe if someone has heard of human design, there's also, it's called Gene Keys, and it's very similar. Yet I say that human design is more of like the masculine structure. It's kind of like, this is how your energy is designed to function. This is how you optimally make decisions. These are your strengths. Whereas Gene Keys is more of like the feminine flow within that structure. It's a very beautiful way of describing our human experience. I feel it's more like creative and emotive, and it could just be the different personalities of these two founders. So there's Ra Urahu, who was a manifester, which manifestors they're very much about informing. So he was very much to the point. And then there's Richard Rudd, who created Gene Keys, and his background was in like deep meditation and spiritual learning. So you really get that depth of, source energy and creation, and what we're fundamentally all here having a human experience doing. So I love these two modalities and bringing them together as well.
For the ladies who haven't gotten any information about what their human design is, like how do they go about that, and what's the simple basic information that they would first get? And maybe if we have time, we could also sort of talk a little bit about how they might be able to apply that into their dating world and what you've seen.
The first step would be to download your body graph. And there's so many free tools of this. You could just type it into Google, like free human design chart. I really love using the human design app on my phone. And that will tell you, that will bring up a graph, and it will have all the numbers and the gates and all of these bits that might look a little bit confusing and overwhelming. But the first thing that you need to look at and really start to experiment with, and it's funny, like when you learn about your human design, I like to say that your human design experiment has begun, because it's really about experimenting and contemplating and then just allowing it to naturally unfold. So once you have your body graph, then it's about looking at your types. So there's like 5 energy types. And once you know what your energy type is, there will be like a theme or a strategy. So like the generator and the manifesting generators are here to respond to life. So that's just an example of the type. And then we have also inner authorities. So this is about decision making, because, and this is interesting where it sort of like separates the mind from the body. So we all have decision making strategies, how we should be making our decisions in life. So practical. And guess what? None of them come from the mind. Oh my gosh, shock, horror. Everyone is designed to make decisions more from the body, whether it be to like ride your emotional wave and come to clarity, or listen to that gut response. So for me, being a sacral generator, my gut response, it's like there's this expansion and opening when it's like, yes, or there's this, oh, no. So there's all these beautiful practical ways. We have the spleen center as well. And that is like this really fast intuition based in survival. And so many times when it comes to our intuition, because we can't really see it and we don't really understand why or how we received this, intuitive hit. But we need to like train our bodies to listen to it. Because what happens, the intuition is faster than the mind, because the mind will lie to us. The mind will tell us tricks. The mind will say whatever it wants us to hear. And if we can listen to that and be like, okay, but I'm going to choose to do the thing anyway, because it's likely holding us back because of fear or doubt or insecurity, imposter syndrome comes in, like, don't message the guy back or don't go on the date. But our intuition is really guiding us, and it's going to be before the mind comes in. So you will know, because there'll be this like, or like, ooh, and that's telling you something. And then the mind will come in secondary to the intuition, secondary to that gut response. So that's how we know the difference. So we can be like, okay, like my body was like, oh, yes. And then the mind was like, oh, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? And then we can say, hey, I'm not going to listen to you today because my body doesn't lie to me. My body has this deep, innate wisdom and intelligence, and I'm going to choose to listen to that instead.
So you help ladies on their journey to finding a beautiful conscious partnership. I'm curious, what are some of the ways in which you're using their human design profile information to support them in that process?
It is really this tool for coming back to your authentic self and trusting in yourself, because when you know who you are, when you know how your energy is designed to function, when you listen to your body and what it's telling you in terms of decision making, then you start to become magnetic. Then you start to have this discernment of what is right for you and what is not right for you. So it's so important, because then we're not going to, we're going to be aware of green flags and red flags, because we're in our truth. We're like, no, this is me, and I'm going to show up as me, And in that space of my authenticity, I'm naturally going to attract a like-minded partner. I'm naturally going to attract someone that has those same values, those same principles of life. And so it starts with human design as a tool to know who you are before that conditioning comes in. And it can also show us our shadows as well. So it's important to kind of like clear up our side of the street before we enter into the dating world, because, you know, even when we do, stuff is still going to come up, but at least we're going to be a little bit more prepared. At least we're going to have those tools of coming back to ourselves, protecting our energy, nourishing and nurturing our soul, our mind, our body, all parts of ourselves first and foremostly. So it's this self-empowerment of, no, this is me. I know who I am. So I'm not going to waver or change when something comes at me that's a little bit uncomfortable. I'm going to be strong in my truth.
What would be an example, or can you give us an example of how the wisdom that they gleaned from their human design or their shadow or something then was able to modify the way that they were dating or relating or making decisions about certain men?
Yeah, I think it's really, I had one client and she's also a generator type, but her inner authority is emotional. And so the emotional types, about 50% of the world have a defined emotional center. So they have consistent emotional waves. And so these people shouldn't make like rash decisions. So not in a heightened emotional state, whether that be like so excited or really like low. So a good advice is to like sleep on it. So when she was like making decisions, she was using her inner authority and not just like jumping into that next exciting thing, but being like, I'm actually going to sleep on it. And if I'm still feeling like this is the right decision in the morning when I wake up, then I'll go for it. So it's kind of like that sacred pause and getting that internal emotional clarity. And it really feels very grounded and calm in the body. So if you wake up and you're still all over the place, highs and lows, then continue to wait and ride that emotional wave out more. And that's allowing you to trust the body and trust the decision-making strategy. And when you do that, decisions become easy, and then it just becomes really fast. Like, oh, I'm riding my emotional wave, or oh, no, my intuition said like, no, this isn't the right. So it's really a beautiful way of, you know, discernment as well. Like we decide who's going to be a potential match and who's not. And that shouldn't be just up in the mind. It needs to have this embodiment.
For the ladies that already know what their main human design type is, and if any of their ladies have actually paused this and have come back after they've found theirs, can you run through the main ones and then maybe any sort of tips or advice or things that might help them in a broad sense with dating and relationships? Yeah.
For sure. So the main type that I mentioned was the generator and manifesting generators. And these are both very similar in terms of how they respond to life. So they have that sacral center defined. So for them, it's really like trust your gut. Like I have a note in my phone or on my computer from 2014, like even before I really realized what human design was. And it just said, trust your gut. And it's like, it gets to be simple. It gets to be easy. It doesn't have to be complicated. Like if you just like walk around and trust your gut, like the universe, life, it's going to give you good things to respond to. And you'll be like, oh, this is like, life gets to be satisfying. I get to feel good. I get to be joyful. So that's the generator and manifesting generator. Our manifestors, so this is only about 9% of the population, so it's a smaller number. And these are the initiators of the world. So even it sounds quite masculine, right? Our sort of masculine society is really training us to initiate and to just like do without sort of like questioning or without thinking about it. And so as a female that's a manifester, sometimes they can be like, oh, well, what, I have to go and ask all the men out on dates, or I have to like make all the first moves. And I had a lot of women manifested clients, and it was like, well, this is beautiful. Like, you do get to initiate, but how can you do that in a feminine way? How can you give that, cheeky glance of the eye or smile? And that's initiating. And then, the potential match will come up, and then you get to be in your feminine surrender, but still from that place of following your energy type of initiating. And then we have projectors. So as I mentioned, my partner is a projector, and they are the guides of the world. Like, they see the potential, and their strategy, it sounds a bit silly, but it's to wait for the invitation. And again, that can be like, what? So I just have to sit at home and hope that, like, some hot guy's going to call me up and be like, hey, babe, let's go on a date. It doesn't mean that you just have to sit back and do nothing. You can still network. You can still put yourself out there. You can still share, like, hey, this is who I am. This is my likes, and then wait for that invitation, because the right ones will come. And when you can be in your authentic truth, you can respond to the invitations that feel aligned, and you can decline the ones that don't. So that's our projectors. And then the final one is the reflector. And this is only like 1% of the population. So reflectors are very beautiful, rare beings, and their like human design chart is completely open. So they are similar to the projector. They are very much guides and healers, and they feel and see a lot and see everything. So for those unicorn reflectors out there, it's really about putting yourself in the right environment, because you essentially become the energy of the people you spend your time with. So are the people that you are spending time with congruent with the version of you that you want to become? So, if you want to be, have a conscious relationship, but you're hanging out, trying to pick up men at the pub, it probably isn't aligned. So really assessing your environment and making sure that it is nourishing you, because you are sampling and taking in all of this energy, and it needs to uplift you rather than drain you. So those are the 5 types, and a few tips for you. Hopefully that'll be helpful in the dating world.
I'm fascinated to dive deeper, and I actually wish that I had my human design here to ask you some questions. But I wanted to also circle back to this idea of just being our authentic self, and the right people will come, and maybe sort of what advice or tips you have on how we can further do that, obviously using human design, but what does that look like when we're becoming more of our authentic self? How would we know if we were making progress with that?
You start to become more your authentic self, you will notice when situations don't feel nourishing. You'll notice when people are no longer aligned with you. And a lot of the time we avoid change. We avoid going into something new or different because it feels uncomfortable. So it's really like exploring that and doing the inner work, going on that journey and actually taking the time. So unfortunately, it's not a quick fix or a short journey. And yeah, looking back at my own personal journey, I do realize, like, I used to be far more of a people pleaser. I used to say yes when I meant no. I would say no when I meant yes. And the more I started to actually listen to that inner voice, the more things started to align for me. And rather than trying to force or control, it does require a level of surrender and of trust. So I think it's really like, first, just having that commitment to yourself, to getting to know you. So maybe it's, journaling every morning and just having a conversation with yourself, reconnecting to your heart. And I like to do sort of like check-ins and connect to, like, how am I feeling mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and observing that they are all different. And like, oh, wow, like I get to hold all of these parts of me, and that's okay. Like, I might be feeling mentally strong, but emotionally I'm going through some kind of turmoil, and that's okay. So I think it comes down to this acceptance and embracing that we get to experience the whole spectrum of emotions and feelings rather than numbing, suppressing, avoiding. So it does require that openness to go into the shadows, the uncomfortable things, to revisit the childhood, and to come out the other side more empowered and more connected to who we really are.
And I love the fact that there is a system that helps to alleviate that, because often it's our own inner voice, our own inner critic that's the most harshest on ourselves. And if there's a system where we can see, okay, well, that is naturally more the type of person that I am, and maybe even to be able to recognize the gifts in that where we might have been self-critical.
Yeah. So when we bring the gene keys in, so with every gene key, you have a shadow aspect, and then you have a gift, and then you have a siddhi, which is like the high expression, or like, the highest way that you can experience that. And so when we look at that, we can actually sort of transmute the shadow. So it really involves looking at all of these parts of us that we're like, oh, I want to like sweep that under the rug and hide that away. But when we actually can embrace that, it's no longer a shadow, because we're like, okay, so yes, we can all be arrogant. We can all have manipulative qualities. We can all have, rage and all of these, negatively perceived emotions. And the only thing that makes them sort of negative is the fact that we try to avoid and hide them. So yeah, within human design and gene keys, we can see like, well, I have one shadow that is impatience, and then the gift is patience, and the high expression is timelessness. So it's really about aligning with the cycles of nature and living in harmony with the moon, with, the sun, with our natural surroundings. And this is a big part of my work as well. So it's very much connected to, the cycles and the rhythms of life. And I'm like, go figure that this is one of my, my superpowers, essentially. So, and then looking back from a young age, impatience. Oh my gosh, I was so impatient. I was running around everywhere, always 10 steps ahead of myself. But to get to this space of timelessness, I had to go through impatience to cultivate patience, and then to, ascend to the higher level. And of course, that doesn't mean that I don't cycle back every now and then. And, that's our part of our human experience, that we go back and forward, and we're here to learn, grow, and evolve. But yeah, I really love that we can look at these shadows and give love to them.
What I'm also hearing as well that I love the sound of, Ella, a lot of the women watching have been on their self-growth or spiritual path for quite some time. But then we also get to a point where it's like, what next? Like, what is the next sort of best thing? And a lot of the time you try and follow your intuition or feel guided by those sorts of things. But it really sounds like human design actually shows a pathway for where we can invest our energy in as far as optimizing that.
Absolutely. Like it's fascinating. And once you go down, the rabbit hole, there's really no coming out. And I constantly learn new things about myself every day with human design. Not only do we have our sort of blueprint, but we're always transiting through different, gate activations, which is like a different energy that we will be feeling collectively. And funnily enough, at the moment, we're actually transiting through the spleen gates, which are all associated with fears. And we do this every year. So yeah, at the moment, maybe collectively we're going through this like fear of being seen, or this fear of not knowing enough. And we can observe these fears as they come up, and then realize that they are irrational, because, fear is really protecting us from imminent threat, right? This is again connecting to our nervous system. It's like, if it was a real fear, it would be, a bear is chasing us, or there's a ninja with a samurai sword at our, front door. But anything else is irrational. So we can be like, okay, I choose to do the thing anyway. I choose to, put myself out there. I choose to dress up sexy and go on that date, because I deserve it.
Yeah, so let's point the ladies into what the next steps could be for them if they're keen to explore human design a little bit more. I'll put a link below for them to be able to take a quiz, and you have a really beautiful resource as far as how we can incorporate human design and our journey to manifesting relationships. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I really love writing, and I really love offering different resources that can be accessible for everyone. So I wrote a couple of ebooks, and yeah, one of them is about attracting your deeply satisfying relationship with human design. And that's a great introduction because it gives you insights into the type, the profile, the decision-making strategy, and some practical tips for dating. And then potentially as a step after that, you might be like, okay, well, I want to know a little bit more specifically for myself. So maybe it's having a human design reading. So I do like one-off readings, and they are very intensive because I share videos, and then I will do a whole report for you. So you get a lot of information. And if you still want to continue that journey, then it could look like, doing some one-on-one mentoring, or potentially in the new year when I relaunch my group program. That's a really beautiful journey to go through in the space of sisterhood and working holistically with all the modalities and techniques that we've already discussed.
Go straight away and download that now as soon as we finish up the call, and then all the other links to connect with Ella are directly below the video as well. Thank you so much, darling, for sharing your time and your wisdom. I'm excited to dive further into this. Is there anything you'd like to leave with the ladies before we finish up?
Oh, I think we could just circle back to that mantra, like living by example gets to be your job, and it gets to be fun. And I think there can be a lot of, stigma around the healing journey. I don't even like to use the word healing. It's like, it's more just becoming whole or remembering who you were. But, it gets to be fun. Like, it doesn't have to be, dredging yourself through the trenches. So I really like to make it fun and embodied and practical. And yeah, we get to just have fun and enjoy this human experience. So I'm happy to share my wisdom and connect with anyone else that's interested in that journey of making life fun and easy.
And I can definitely vouch for that. Ella does walk her talk, and being in her energy does allow and give us all permission for it to feel lighter and more fun. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you again tomorrow for another session. Bye for now.